Welcome to the first episode, hopefully of many, of Bridging the Gap. I'm C. I know it's real short, real simple, and this is my co-host.
Brand. My name Brandon.
Cool, C. All right. So the purpose of this podcast is to basically bridge the gap between two generations. We want to bridge the gap between the older and younger generation. So older may have more wisdom when it comes to certain things, but being older, we also need to listen to the younger generation because we don't know everything and we need to identify it. The most important thing is to start listening to each other. Instead of judging, there's just not enough communication going back and forth. So that's the purpose of this podcast, and that's what we're trying to do. We're basically trying to bridge the gap. So hopefully, it's entertaining and you actually get something out of it. So we're going to start this discussion off with something that happened pretty recently. Typically, I don't think we're really going to deal with gossip or things of that nature, but this topic I think is far reaching. So we're going to start with the whole idea and concept of marriage and how marriage is viewed nowadays. So the perspective of marriage and I have to say this, we're both Christian, so we're coming from that type of background. So a lot of people may not identify where we're coming from with this,
Right.
but it's okay. This is our thing, and this is what we're true to. So either rock with it or don't, doesn't matter. We are true to ourselves, and we're honest about this. So in my definition, and Brandon can chime in, marriage is between a man and a woman. And I believe that marriage is not something that should be taken lightly. I don't believe that, I personally don't believe in divorce. And I can speak to that. A lot of people in my family actually are divorced. I don't judge anybody, but me personally, I don't abide by that. If I'm going to get married, that's pretty much it. I'm stuck. Good, bad, or whatever, that's going to be it for me. But I believe in today's society that people don't really have that same train of thought. I believe a lot of people kind of look at marriages like, I guess, like a microwave relationship. Like, if it doesn't work in 5 minutes, we're just going to get out of it. That's kind of like my perspective of it. You have any intake on that?
I mean, we basically agree to the team about everything. It's first and foremost, it's between male and female. At the end of the day, no matter how society tries to, portray it, it is what it is. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, we come from a religious background, and first and foremost, we gotta follow God's law. And God's law clearly states, He's against divorce. So we just living in evil times nowadays, where anything basically going. The pastors, whether they're innocent of hand-me-down preaching, or they just, like, some pastors may even know the word, and they still might be against divorce, but they will still remarry people in the congregation. So what does that make them at the end of the day, right? So
remember, the devil was in heaven.
he was.
The devil
He
was in heaven. He was an angel. So
Right.
let's not forget that concept. But
Right.
yes.
And like, it's even prophesied that in latter times it would be a great falling away from the church and everything. So, and you definitely seeing that now. Like I said, microwave marriages. Now, I will say this: the Bible does justify separation,
Yes.
but because let's face it, people get married and then they might, for whatever reason, fall out of love. Whatever the case is.
Right. And there may be extreme scenarios like someone domestic abuse,
Exactly.
and someone's
Yeah.
being beat, or things
Right.
of that nature, which we can understand.
Right. And by any means are you obligated to stay with that person in those extreme circumstances. However, even though you move out you may move across the country, whatever the case is, y'all still bound in God's eyes to the law of marriage, except when one person die.
Right.
So that's when you're free from the law of marriage. Um, but yeah, a lot of people have a different interpretations of the Bible. They they like to use that specific verse. I believe in Matthew that talks about you basically, except for fornication, that you'll be able to be free from that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that married people can't commit fornication; they commit adultery,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
what that saying is, you can see an example of that, and I believe Matthew chapter 1, how Joseph and Mary, they were called husband and wife, they were espoused, meaning they were just engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're engaged with somebody, you're still technically married. I mean, you're still technically single. My fault.
You're single
technically
until you're
single.
married.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, being as though they technically single, and they still called each other the titles husband and wife, if Joseph decided to get rid of, Mary, he can do that.
Right.
That's what
Anything
that
else?
scripture basically is saying.
Right.
Except for fornication, because if that was a situation where she stepped out or he stepped out,
Mm-hmm.
that's fornication.
Right.
So yeah, but a lot of people, um, they got to seek knowledge for themselves instead of just referring to their pastor on knowledge, because um, it's prophesied again there's going to be many false prophets, and who's to say your pastor is not one of them? That's why Jesus says search the scriptures.
Mm.
Definitely search the scriptures. Don't rely on just any one man that's preaching the word.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure he backing up what he talking.
I think that's where a lot of people get lost, because a lot of people don't want to put that legwork in and read
Yeah.
for themselves.
Yeah.
So it's easier to just, I go to church and let them interpret it for me and let me know basically what I'm supposed to think. That's why it's interesting that people are referred to as their flock, like a bunch of sheep, right? Because sheep follow the shepherd, right? So you teach what you believe, what you interpret something to be,
Right.
and they all follow you.
Right.
And, they'll ride hard for them. Even though they may see certain tendencies, they look past that type of stuff. Which, me as a male is, that's a whole different conversation.
Right. And then it's funny you say that too, like they look past certain stuff. Because a lot of people are under this impression, which is true, that nobody's perfect. Which is true.
Right.
Right. But at the same time, even though nobody's perfect, that the scriptures are. And
Yes.
if your pastor or whatever is not, even though he's human just like us, even though he has flaws just like us, if he's like misinterpreting the Bible, or if he's just going astray, not teaching the word correctly, then he's going to pass that along to the flock, and they're going to become the lost sheep.
Indeed.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's scary times out here today,
Yeah, it is, and it's funny that you kept mentioning pastor, because which kind of takes us to a new topic.
Let's talk about it.
So this pastor, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Devin
something.
Franklin.
Megan Good's husband.
Oh, okay, all right, we'll go with that. So Megan Good's husband, who is a pastor, and also in the industry, in Hollywood. Like, he's a high-ranking exec. Like, he's known, very successful. It's funny because he said he was celibate before he met her, and after they met on work, I think they worked on Jumping the Broom, that movie. They met on that set. So he saw her and thought, that's my wife. which is interesting. I
He
think,
said that.
yeah,
Like his exact words. Okay.
yeah, I know, right? So, I think sometimes we get tested in life.
Hmm.
So he said he was celibate because he was looking for all these different things, and he actually on his list he said he wouldn't deal with an actress because he knows what comes along with that.
Right.
Yet, so that's why I think sometimes God tests us on
Hmm.
our faith and what we're supposed to be doing. I think we've all been through this one way or another, especially as a male, we get tempted.
Hmm.
So I think, he had this idea of I'm going to be strong and this is what I want to do. Then Megan Good comes walk up in there and,
Right.
change his whole mindset on that. So his congregation was kind of against it, or trying to warn him. But I don't know how much I can give to that because the majority of churchgoers are women. And any
Hmm.
church, it's just it is what it is by
Right.
numbers. So I don't know if they were sincere in looking out for him or more because he's a young, successful black man and maybe jealousy or ego. They didn't want him dealing with her, and maybe they wanted him. So I can't speak from that standpoint. But
Mm.
from a pastor, you met Megan Good. Yeah, she's fine. She's bad.
Right.
But one thing I ask is, has she ever shown herself to be a wife? I don't believe a ring makes someone a wife. I
Hmm.
believe you are or you aren't. And, no disrespect to her, but she's never carried herself as someone like, that's my wife. I want that person to be the mother of my children. She
Right.
just doesn't that just never came across. I mean, let's be real, is more of like a sex symbol, and that's what she really came across as.
Hmm.
Now you can still be young and still be sexy without being, extra with it.
Right.
Now I'm not saying she was out there throwing everything, but she's not shy on showing. You know what I
Right.
mean? So as a pastor, for you to look at her and that's the person you want to marry in a short amount of time, that I don't know. Like I think you got caught up in the physical. Like I think the flesh really got you, and she might have played the game well and
Hmm.
portrayed herself to be a certain way.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's the case, but now he's like on social media. I haven't really looked into that because I don't really care that much. But people tell me like he's out there, crying and complaining, like he's in his feelings, which
On
you know,
social media.
yeah.
Okay.
But like I'm not a social media person, so I
Right.
like what people just tell me. I was like, all right, well,
Right.
you tell me, I'm not looking it up. But um, I mean, if that's the case, that's sad. But you know, that comes along with this. Almost maybe you didn't have enough experience to know who you should weed out and who you shouldn't. But in his heart, I guess he really thought this was the one. But I still ask the question of what about her seemed like she's wifey?
Hmm.
And am I wrong in my perception of her?
I mean, I can't say you're wrong in your perspective of her because everybody's entitled to their own opinion at the end of the day. Uh, but I pose the question, what makes someone a wife material? Um, and like you said, he could have been just caught up in the flesh, caught up in lust,
Mm.
because that can definitely cloud our judgment on things. Yeah. Like men definitely like lost their minds over women.
I always
Um,
will.
and the strongest of men can fall victim, to that. So
Yeah.
like I said, going back to I posed the question, what do you really look for in a woman to view her as a wife material?
Mm.
Um, Now, how they met on jumping a broom or
Right.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, how was she portraying herself? Even though the society may say it's acting, but it's like how is it viewed in God's eyes? Like, because at
Mm.
the end of the day, we gotta take everything back to Scripture because we're Christians.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, like I said, it might be acting in society's eyes, but in God's eyes, it's not acting. So if she happened to be like, I guess, showing off her body in a movie or whatever, just in life in general, it doesn't necessarily have to be a movie. Well, is that somebody you want to, wife? You know,
I know a lot of people are probably going to say no, they're acting, but I'll ask a couple other questions
hmm
on top of that. Angela Bassett is one of the most beautiful women of all time to me. How many
okay.
times can you say you've seen like Angela Bassett showing her body off? And
I can't
that's
even,
never hurt her. That's
right,
never hurt her.
right.
She's still one of the most elite actresses, and no one's ever said, I don't want her or she's garbage. She actually is an
You
actor.
gotta understand too, like she come from a different era. Like how old is
True, but
she?
y'all can't do that. She's still bad.
She is,
Like
but it's like
it's a different
she,
act. No, you're right. It's a different era where they had less power. So
right,
she would have been forced to do
right.
something
That
more
makes
so than
sense.
somebody else.
Right,
So I think that stuff is subjective in a way, and you're right. Like I think the whole Hollywood casting couch thing, I know that's real,
hmm
but everything is a choice. Like there are a lot of actresses that are married, and you won't see them just doing certain parts, or you won't
exactly.
see them doing certain things. So that's what I say. Like you do have some type of control, and also at the end of the day, if you're married and you're married to a pastor, don't you
Right,
want to be respectful? And I'm not saying
right.
she wasn't. I'm not like I don't know what she was doing as far as movies and roles and things of that nature.
hmm
But when you ask a question as far as what is a wife, um, I think regardless of a profession, she should carry herself a certain way. I
Right,
don't think
I
her
agree.
body should be on display for the world. That should be for her husband. And you shouldn't be seeking attention from the world and everybody else.
Right,
Because it's an insecurity, I think, at the end of the day, because you need confirmation from people.
right.
So that I personally think that's a problem. And from a wife, I don't I wouldn't want to deal with that from my wife. That my wife needs constant validation outside of me.
Right. And see, this kind of situation is tricky because it definitely go both ways. Like, yeah, we want our woman to dress modest, um, but like, is the men dressing modest as well? Like, and
Mm,
not to say that he was. I'm just speaking in general.
right.
We want our women to be a certain way, but are we that way? That we asking them to be?
Mm,
So if they're revealing, what they wear and stuff like that, are we on Instagram with our shirts off or, you know, just not covered too?
right.
So
No,
it
no.
definitely
I'm
go
with
both
you.
ways with that.
And I agree with that 100%. I don't believe you can ask somebody to do something you're not willing to do yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
So I agree with that.
Um, but as far as like, I'm curious to see, well, I'm curious to understand, like, as a pastor, you will want your wife to carry herself a certain way, and I think first and foremost, she has to want that for herself first. But that should have been identified before y'all got married. Like
Agreed.
it's just certain stuff you gotta examine in a woman and a man, vice versa. It's certain stuff you gotta evaluate to even make up in your mind. Okay, that's the person I want to marry. Now, does she
Mm-hmm.
respect herself? Does he respect herself? How does he go
Mm,
about life?
mm-hmm.
Like I said, it all starts with Finn first, and if they gotta have respect for God first, and then themselves, and then their husband or wife. So it's kind of like a trickle down effect.
Right.
And going back to society now, a lot of people don't view that as a problem. And they might say that they Christians or whatever the case is, but um, I understand nobody's perfect, but at the end of the day, we gotta deny our flesh and do what Christ want at the end of the day. So
True indeed.
uh, it's easier said than done. But like that's just certain things, as men,
Hmm.
we try to look for in a wife is first and foremost, does she respect God? And
Mm.
if she say yes, can we see that in actions beforehand?
Mm.
That's what I look for when I'm
Hmm.
looking for a wife. Like anybody can say they're a Christian, anybody can say they fear God,
Hmm.
but what's their mindset? Like how do they treat people? How do they carry themselves? Outside on social media.
Yep.
How are they portraying themselves?
Yep.
Are they just talking to talk, or like I said, nobody's perfect, but are they at
Hmm.
least striving to live a certain way? So all that really, really matters. When trying to find a wife or vice versa, a husband.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you definitely gotta see their actions instead of just saying, oh, I'm a Christian.
Uh, I agree. I mean, I think, of course, you need to have conversations, right? So you need to
Right.
talk. But what I've learned getting older is it's not so much about what people say, it's what they do. So if someone really is about something, you'll see it by their actions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody can tell you, I'm not going to cheat, then go and cheat. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cheat anymore, and go and cheat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah, you said it, but your actions are saying otherwise.
Right.
So, and that's why I think sometimes you need to take a step back and like take some time to really get to know that person. I know people like to rush in it, and maybe he did rush in it, but I think if he gave that a little bit more time, whatever the reason why they got divorced might have showed itself. Like maybe she was about something, or maybe she wasn't, and something didn't click. But man, I don't know.
And I say this too, right? I feel like it starts with us too as men.
Mm.
Like we got to make sure before we even look for a wife, are we sound or striving to be, right with God? And most times, if we're striving to be that way, everything else is going to handle itself.
Mm.
So if we really trying to, live a life pleasing to God, um, you'll start to notice we have like a change in mind, just the way we think. And having that change in mind and what we think is going to, transfer over to how we pick our woman. So we're going to start evaluating them like, all right, how do they go about life? Like, what's our
Mm-hmm.
mindset like?
Mm-hmm.
Is our mindset worldly, or is our mindset, trying to live a life pleasing to God? Now, if
True.
it's worldly, you know, that's how many men fall into that trap. And then they wonder why when they get married, the divorce rate
Oh my,
keeps
yeah,
going up
yeah.
because that relationship, that marriage wasn't God wasn't the foundation to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. Whether they said they Christians or not, if you, like I said, anybody can say that, but by actions,
True.
and that's something as human beings we all struggle with from time to time. But
Yeah.
it's about striving, at the end of the day. So
True. True. It's weird. I don't know why I thought about what when you were talking it made me think about. So the pastor was celibate, and came across her and said, that's going to be my wife. And I said, when you are of a certain mindset and you're trying to do good, that's when you get tested, right?
right,
So that's when things are going to be thrown at you. And it's funny because I just remember a situation of my own. I was celibate for a while,
right.
and I started dating again. And it's funny because she was a church girl.
They
Went to
be the
church
they be
every
the ones,
man.
man. They
Yeah,
be
I was always warned that when I was younger, but when you started getting experience, you're like, oh my God, they were right. All of them, they were right.
right.
So I remember the first time we went out. We're in the parking lot, walking her to her car.
Hmm.
She literally says to me, "How long do you really think you can hold out?"
Not the Christian woman.
Yes, the
Not
Christian woman. It's like, you know,
Oh
like I
man.
was like, whoa, wait, what? And that's a weird thing. When you are in that state, you'll get tested crazy. Like
Mhm.
people try to break you.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, no one really wants to speak on. Women don't like being told no. No one wants to talk about that, but that's
Right.
real.
Right.
But like I understand, he probably was in this state, and he kind of faltered as far as what he was looking for, what he really needed, because
Mhm.
you know, you that thing kind of got to him,
Right.
and I can understand.
Right.
It's like,
Right. I
but
mean,
I may have had a better outcome than him, but
right.
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we all men. At the end of the day, we all gonna fall sometimes. We all have temptation.
Hmm.
Women have temptation too. We not the only one that face that.
Yeah.
And it's all about how we, you know, react to that. Now, in his situation, like I said, I don't know Megan Good personally,
Right.
so I can't really speak too much on that.
Right. Right.
But as a man, evaluating, the woman that we choose to be a wife, it's just certain things that we gotta become better at as men, so we won't fall into this trap of divorce. Um, it starts with us. Like we gotta set the tone and what we exactly want. Not even want, but like need in a woman.
Hmm.
Because a woman can have all the looks. She can be battered than Holly Berry. Whatever the
Yeah.
case is.
I'm good on Holly too.
But right.
But anyways.
But if our mindset not there, if our
Right.
respect for God first,
Hmm.
herself first,
Mm.
if that's not there, then you just bound for failure.
Mm.
How can you expect for her to respect you if those two things, God and herself, she don't respect first and foremost,
Mm. That's
and
real.
vice versa.
Hmm.
Ladies too.
Hmm.
If your man doesn't fear God, if he doesn't respect himself,
Hmm.
you just bound to be set up for failure. So I
Mm.
encourage everybody to really take your time, like you were saying, take your time getting to know somebody, um, evaluate them, and it's not. And I hear this a lot too in today's society. A lot of women pose a question, what can you really do for me? Stuff like that. That really like
That's
determines some of like their decision making as far as is this
hilarious.
a man that's good for me?
Hmm.
Instead of now, it's good that
Uh,
men, I guess, boyfriends or whatever,
hmm.
help out every once in a while. But like at the end of the day, we're not obligated to yet because we're not married.
Right.
Same for women, you're not really obligated to do anything for a man yet,
Hmm.
unless you married. But
Right.
at the end of the day, um, we got to see certain stuff in each other, right? In our lifestyles. That's how we determine, or she might be a good wife to me one day.
Right.
Look how she, treat her family.
Hmm.
Look how she go about life. Look how she carry herself
Right.
in general, at work, on social media. She's not like the rest of these women I've ever seen. 9 times out of 10, that's what you want to look at, not oh she can she good in bed, or
Yeah.
just all this stuff that really don't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah. You
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 know,
you're gonna eat more than you're gonna have sex.
right?
So always remember
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
She
So
can't cook, but she look good. All right.
right.
What are we doing?
So yeah, well, once we us men start to become better at evaluating women, not just on what they can do for us physically,
Mm,
but mentally, spiritually, like what can they feed us, you
that's a
know.
good point. On behalf of the show, I would like to thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll actually be notified when we drop new content, which will be coming on a regular basis, and we look forward to bringing it to you. We will see you next video. So, one final note. If you're looking to take a step into the right direction on your fitness and health goals, check out blessthecut.com. That's blessthecut.com. If you're looking for a virtual trainer or you're trying to come out with a workout tailored for you and your lifestyle, please check out blessthecut.com. And at the same time, if you're trying to improve your personal, professional, or financial life, please check out www.hiphopmanor.com. That's hiphopmanor.com. And also, as a free resource, check out the YouTube channel Hip Hop Manor. Thank you.